7 minutes after 8. Some scripts just write themselves. It's 7 minutes after 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, which broadcasts every weekday morning from 6 a.m. to 10 hug.
Wow. Hey. You're on a roll, eh?
It is sweet. It is sweet. The conversations continue. We want to switch over the conversation now, and we want to talk about the role of our elected politicians. We're addicted to too much endless partisan politics at the expense of governance and representing the people and addressing the plight of Kenyans. Joining us for that conversation is Kipruto Kirwa. He is a former member of parliament, former cabinet secretary. Oh, no, those days it was not cabinet secretary.
Cabinet minister.
It was former cabinet minister.
Yes.
And party aficionado who's here now. Good morning.
Morning.
Good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. How are you keeping?
Very well. I think it can be better, given the fact that the drought is ravaging the entire country.
Yep.
And each one of us is worried.
Yep.
Not about our livestock, but about our lives. Yeah, it is worrying.
You know, you come from an area where it rains, and it rains properly. Charangani. Is it raining now in those hills?
Not quite. In fact, the rain got depressed towards the end of last year. Usually in October, there is a bit of rain that comes, then in December. But we did not witness that. And we are likely not to have good rains even if the season is going to start. It's usually 20th of March. That's when we would start planting.
Yeah.
And that's when the rains come. But I'm not sure about this year.
We hosted an MP from the MP for Molo last week, and he told us throughout his life growing up, he has never seen Molo go for so many months without a drop of rain.
Yes, that's true. But even in Nakuru, some parts of Nakuru, like in Dabibi, where it gets a lot of rain, but this time there's no rain. The river next to my house here in town has not had the lowest like this year. But some of the water levels that I've been enjoying at the front of in front of my house, now this year I'm worried. I'm seeing more of stones than water. Yeah.
It's a sad situation. Let's discuss that as we talk about the plight of Kenyans. But to welcome you into the show, C.T. Muga has the day's proverb.
Yeah, thank you. It's the first time I get here. I've been enjoying it from my house, but now I'm enjoying. And I realize also President Museveni enjoys.
Of course he does.
Because he mentioned him. He's the young man with the white beard. In Jivumbi.
City?
Our proverbs for the whole of this week from the country of Rwanda. Now, did you know that in terms of size, Rwanda is the 149th largest country in the world?
Out of how many?
Well, take your pick. How many countries are there in the world?
It's about 204.
Yes, exactly. So they're smaller countries. Some of them are called principalities. But Rwanda is that size. Now, did you also know that Rwanda has a prime minister? I mean, everyone knows about President Kagame.
Yeah.
Okay? But do you know who the prime minister is?
I forget his name. I've seen some communication.
Edward Girente. That is the name.
He's the prime minister.
I wanted to say that.
You wanted to say that? Yes.
Is there an office of the spouse of the prime minister in Rwanda?
Not that I know of.
Oh, okay.
They
they can have one if they like.
As I said, not that I know of.
They should think very, very strongly
The
about
spouse
it.
of the president of this particular country is also a serving minister.
She is.
Oh,
Yes.
just like Uganda.
Yes.
Yes. So,
Okay. But did you know in Equatorial Guinea,
yes.
the deputy president is the son of the president?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
that one we know,
those fellows are progressive that way. Yes. Yes. They understand these things. Yes. Keep things close within the family.
Of course.
Yes.
Keep people
And
gainfully
the
employed.
president himself overthrew his own uncle.
Yes, he did.
As I said,
See?
keep things close within the family.
What's the proverb?
The proverb is, in a court of fowls, a cockroach never wins his case.
In a court of fowls,
Yes.
a cockroach never wins his case.
Yes.
Okay.
Kipruto, do you understand this proverb?
Well, like if any goat was to get into a hyena's courtyard, it will be diminished. So no justice in society, which goes also by the principle of realism, that human nature is evil from the beginning of time. Yeah.
The weak will never get the justice.
You don't expect that you'll enjoy justice.
That's indeed true. Let's talk about the state of the nation. So we have various things that are happening. Now, you've, of course, started by telling us about the drought, which, yes, we are right there in the middle of worst drought in 40 years in this country. There's a story in the papers today that's talking about just the last 5 months, about, is it 2.5 million heads of cattle have died?
2.5 million.
2.5 million, according to the National Drought Management Authority, in just 5 months, and in 2 counties, focusing on 2 counties. Many more livestock have actually died across the country. Many more people are going without a meal, and we're talking about raising, how we can feed the people. Cost of living going up. With now the exchange rate doing the way it's doing, it means that also cost of goods as the raw material comes into, the inputs come into the country, going up. Very many things, and the government is trying to grapple with all these things at the same time. Do you think they have a handle on things?
Well, I do not want to sound negative, but I think there is so much about bitterness over the previous regime than focusing on real issues. As you've said, we've lost livestock in a number of counties, and those are the ones which have been recorded. We have also lost wildlife. You see zebras and some other animals that in the past they have survived. I traveled to Kajiado over the weekend, and you could see almost in every market you can no longer see any cow, or you can see 10 cows, and you see a lot of bones when you go to the interior. The small stock are the ones which have survived because they can get some food from tree leaves, dry ones, and so forth. So it is a very serious situation in the country, and I feel that the regime of the day should spend more time focused on the issues that affect each one of us, instead of getting worried about Uhuru or Raila. Those people are not in charge of the country, and therefore let's allow them to do what they are doing, what the opposition is supposed to do. That is my worry. And I don't see an answer coming soon, given the level of bitterness that regardless has turned himself into an auditor, he's turned himself into a prosecutor and a jailer, and of course a prison warden, because he wants everybody to look like they are under them. They should realize that, yes, democratically, they may claim they have won the election, and have no reason, because Chebukati pronounced, Supreme Court affirmed, but the truth of the matter is that this country is bleeding, and that we cannot run away from.
Don't you think that they're also doing that? They're also dealing with the issues that are affecting Kenyans on a daily basis. They have looked at how to cut back the budget by presenting a supplementary budget that, has cut things. They've looked at how do we address the issue of farmers, provision of subsidized fertilizer to farmers, and saying, look, we're going to have some rainfall season. It's going to be suppressed, but nonetheless, plant, and here's the reduced cost of input for fertilizer. They've looked at organizing on how they can feed the people who are hungry. Don't you think they are still addressing the issues that are there? Only that politics is being highlighted more.
Well, I've been in the same shoes before. Famine relief is the worst components of corruption. If you want to get involved in famine, in corruption, just invite drought and famine, and there you will get your money. You can be removing maize from the stores, let's say 2,000 bags or even 20,000 bags every day, and you can call the press to show people in the queue, only to realize that only 2 bags out of 20,000 is what has gotten to the people. And how to audit that is impossible. It's like the queue voting in 1988, where the longest line became the shortest, and vice versa. So if you want to get involved in real corruption, talk of famine relief. That is one component of the story. The second issue is that we are grappling with issues of trying to make the cost of living better. But when it comes to fertilizer subsidy, it's a component out of so many other components. The most important is how do you handle post-harvest losses? Towards the end of last year, this regime had taken over. And that is when we were harvesting the bulk of the maize in the North Rift. And you would have expected that they would intervene by bringing a measure of purchasing for purposes of cushioning the farmer and ensuring that there is price stabilization. That was the essential component of National Cereals and Produce Board. You buy when the prices are low. And when there is high supply, you take it away so that you stabilize the prices. Just like the role of central bank. It just waits when the dollar seems to be misbehaving. They mop up the dollars from the market or release the dollars to the market. They did not do that. So they failed in one cardinal principle of trying to handle post-harvest losses. Eric, remember post-harvest losses in Kenya, especially for maize, comprises a component of 30%. This therefore because of poor handling of the grains. So even the farmers who are stuck with maize, we were accusing them of hoarding. Those conditions are not good enough. One time in my life, I kept 1,000 bags of maize in the stores from January to June. By the time I tried to sell in June, I had lost 400 bags.
Wow.
So 40% of the crop that I had. And that is when I learned never keep any crop in the stores, sell it immediately. You may sell it at a loss, but you are better off. Because in Trans Nzoia, Uasin-Gishu, some parts of Western, there is this weevil called Osama. If it gets into your store, it will eat the maize, it will eat even the gunia. So at the end of the day, you will find powder that your maize has been turned into. And that is a reality. We are not just talking out of imagination. This is a practical reality. I would have expected the government to intervene by purchasing excess from the farmers and ensuring that prices were stabilized. I would have expected them to improve transportation, because that is another component of post-harvest handling. I would have expected them to intervene in terms of even storing for the farmers so that to release to them, because there are better facilities of storage compared to me and you as ordinary farmers in Trans Nzoia or any other part of this nation.
Right. Even as you talk about these expectations in terms of what needs to be done, a lot of times we can we can sit and pontificate about many things and say it should have been, it ought to be, I expect that this be done. The things that you speak of, in terms of difficulty for the government, on what scale would you put that on? 1 to 10. 10 being the most difficult, to be able to get these things that you're saying be done.
Well, it doesn't need rocket science. It just needs a bit of innovation and a bit of practical reality, and also a bit of patriotism. Because who is importing this maize they are telling us, the 4 million bags or so? It's the same people, the same cartels. William Ruto was saying he was going to chase cartels out of State House. As he was chasing the others to Abratam, he was entering with some of them, and we know them. Some of them had 17 cases. They were all dropped. Some of them had issues with KRA. They ended up almost presiding over KRA. So what we are doing is that we are pretending. Let me say this, for lack of a better term, this country is held hostage by individuals who call themselves leaders. Whether they are in Azimio or in Kenya Kwanza, we've been held hostage because there is conspiracy that brings what we call a coalition, which is not coalition. It's a misnomer to call it coalition. It's balkanization of Kenyans. So people conspire, like the four of us, we can conspire. We say you come from community A, B, C, D. Then we say together we are going to conspire against the rest of the country, and we win power, and we appropriate ourselves. That's why an individual is calling a whole nation a company with shareholders, excluding the rest of us. It worries me.
When you say that, because you're actually raising some serious concern here, you're talking about it's not part of the government plan. And I like the journey that you've begun. We had farmers who were harvesting their crop towards the end of the year. And we're already talking about anticipating that we're going to have a shortage of the required amount of maize in the market, which is why we're talking about anticipating that we'll open up the window for importation of grains from February and March. But you're saying in that intervening period, the government should have done better to make sure that we do not lose any of the grain that we harvest. So they didn't do that. Now we are talking about importation. The deputy president the other day was cautioning farmers as he was opening the ASK show in Eldoret. You have maize, please sell it now, because when the imported maize comes, it's going to be tax-free, it's going to be cheaper, and you will lose out. But now you're going further to say, this importation window, we should also look at this. Who's participating in it? Why should we focus on that?
We should focus on it because, you know, this region called IGAD region, all the way from Ethiopia to Zambia, including parts of Comesa and even SADC, is a grain deficit region. This therefore means there is no time that we have enough. But it is also a region that has some kind of discrepancies, that one time we have surplus in Kenya when Tanzania is crying, or Malawi. At times Ethiopia, southern Ethiopia, has a bit of maize, and we are crying here in Kenya, especially the northern frontier. So it is a region that we need all the time to be alive to the moving dynamics of the weather. Because when Tanzania has surplus crop, Kenya has a problem. And when they have surplus crop, the following season, they are likely to run into a deficit. So if there was a way of having a grain storage that can be, say, the Horn of Africa, that would be able to mitigate some of the problems. But the mistake we make is that we behave in pigeonholes, in silos. Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and so forth. So that when there is surplus in Uganda, it's only through our own informal networks, what we call cross-border trade, which is done at times illegally and in very, 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 very unique situations legally, despite even the opening of the borders. And at times we also do from Tanzania. That comprises about 10% of the maize that we have here in Kenya and even southern Ethiopia. So what we need to do is to be alive to those challenges and make sure we assist. The 110 depots of National Cereals and Produce Board distributed nationally, some are supposed to be taking in the maize, some are supposed to be storing the maize. And one time when I was in the ministry, we realized that southern Ethiopia had a lot of maize. And instead of moving maize from Kitale to Marsabit or Wajir, we decided to buy from Ethiopia. We said we open, let people move with their maize, we buy, we make it a depot for maize buying, although it was a depot for maize storage. And that is the maize that we distributed in that region. It does not need a lot of complicated science. It needs just being unselfish about the situation of maize. And I'm not blowing my own trumpet. Throughout the period I was Minister for Agriculture, we imported only 1 million bags. And it was because these cartels put pressure on me. It was headline in almost every paper that there is shortage of maize. I briefed the president. At some stage, I realized I was losing his confidence. So we decided with my officers, let us import but a limited amount of maize, but we frustrated the process because we knew we are going to have good harvest at the end of the year.
These cartels, Mheshimiwa, how do they operate? You are Kibaki's agriculture minister.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So all these matters that we're talking about, you understand them very well.
Yep.
How do these cartels operate? How is it that they would also be able to get the ear of the president and convince him in a certain direction?
You know, Eric, cartels, just like they are human beings, and they have their own network. And they behave in a way that it is so seamless and it looks so natural. The information from NIS will be coming to the president that there is famine situation, information from OP under what they call special programs at that time is coming, there is famine, information from all departments. So I went to see the president one Friday with my peers at that time. I think it was Ongwae, and Tirop Koske was the managing director of National Cereals and Produce Board. We briefed the president, Then he asked me one question, because you brief him, the officers back you up. He asked me one question. If we went to those places, are we likely to see the maize? I told him, yes, sir. Then I made a fatal mistake. I said, but you know, the media has been highlighting there is no maize, which is not true. Then he told me, kama tungekuwa na hayo makaratasi, tungeandika hiyo. So I knew I've lost the president. So I quickly retreated. I told him, sir, let me come back on Tuesday. He told me, yes, we will be here. So come back. So that is when we connived now to import only 1 million bags, because we knew any importation to be done in August will find us when we are harvesting.
Already harvesting.
In October, November. So that's how we conspired. It was a conspiracy that I felt it was to assist this nation. But all the stories and the people imported are the ones now who found themselves in a serious scandal.
And when you imported the maize, the stories changed in the media.
It changed, but
and the reports that were reaching the president were different.
Yeah, they were different, because you see, by the time they were talking, that maize was landing in Mombasa, the story was now different. That Kirwa is importing, has allowed importation when the maize is being harvested in the North Rift. So I was in double trouble. Perhaps that's why part of the reason why I lost my seat.
When you look at now the situation that we are seeing, what do you think is happening? Number one, of course, there is maize shortage in the country. There is no doubt about that, right? But the question is about the importation, because the agriculture CS now says we are going to open up the importation window, not just for maize but for grains. So we are looking at on maize and other grains as well. Do you think the cartels are at play?
The cartels are in town, and what I would request, and this is what I would propose to the government of the day, is to ensure that this importation is managed in the way that we don't bring a glut of importation that will depress. Because you see, Eric, there are 4 seasons in Kenya, 4 harvesting seasons. There is the South Rift, which includes parts of Nyanza. There is the North Rift, which is the main harvesting area. There is also the coast and some parts of central Kenya. So it is sort of cyclic. Right now, we would have expected we'd be getting maize from eastern area, like Machakos, Makueni, but of course the crop has failed. This is the time now, and that is what the importation is coming to fill in. But if the rain will start, by July, we'll be having harvest from the South Rift and some parts of Nyanza. And if we have too much, at that particular time, the millers will not be interested in your maize from the South Rift and even from Nyanza. And therefore, the prices will be depressed and the farmers will run into some serious losses. And that may spill over to the maize that we ought to harvest now from the coast much later, and of course, the North Rift. So when this problem starts, like if you are late for a meeting in the morning, usually you'll be late for the rest of the meeting, the rest of the day.
If you don't manage yourself well.
If you don't manage yourself or even skip some of the meetings. I've realized it's like a curse. That's why I came here early.
Very good. Let's take a break on that note. 8:30, Kipruto Kirwa is a former minister for agriculture, former minister in the Kibaki administration. He is also a seasoned politician, started in the very early days, the multi-party push, being in the opposition benches and being also in government. And now he is one who sits back and talks as an elder.
Thank you.
He's here to talk to us as an elder and asking ourselves, are our leaders who are all in all positions of political leadership focusing too much on partisan politics at the expense of governance and at the expense of what is affecting Kenyans? That's a conversation we'll be coming back to.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Conversation continues with Kipruto Kirwa. Ndu?
Yes. So here we are, and we can be prescriptive in all of what needs to happen in government today. But what are we saying? That there is a choice, and it's the hard. I believe that if there's a desire to do something, that you can actually do it and have it done right. In the midst of all of this, geographically, there's nothing you can do to change the situ of Kenya. you know that there's going to be drought. But are we saying that you can then desire to do things better? Whether we're looking at corruption today, whether we're looking at a drought situation tomorrow, whether we're looking at, the cost of living being through the roof. Are you saying then, Weshimiwa, that it is about the decision you make to make things better that would matter in all of this?
Well, let me put it this way. Like our good writer, Chinua Achebe, said, that Africa enjoys a variety of things. Plenty of good people, plenty of rains, very good climate, and generally well-placed geographically to deal with the rest of the world. But the main problem with Africa is leadership. Anything that visits any country cannot be said to be beyond the capacity of leaders, because also God intervenes when you help yourself. But what I read about many leaders in Kenya is that whenever there is a disaster, it is a time for them to harvest. I remember when I was in the ministry, anytime there was quelea birds and even armyworms, or even any infestation by some of the vagaries that visit our crops, you would find people moving in the corridor so fast because it's a chance to do procurement, and this is a procurement of medicine to kill these insects or birds, or to manage them. And this therefore means it's a period to harvest. They don't look at the disaster that is likely to befall the country. They look at the opportunity to harvest from that particular misfortune. So my take is, we cannot blame anybody on the drought, but how you manage the drought is very important. And that's why we are saying it is not beyond any regime to mobilize its own resources to ensure that the people of Kenya do not face the kind of disaster we are facing. Even the 2.5 million livestock that died, we could have mobilized hay. This is what the Honorable Joseph Munyao did when we were sharing the Ministry of Agriculture as Minister for Livestock Development. We bought hay, took to the farmers, because initially we were giving the farmers maize with the hope that they are going to eat. Then we realized they were feeding their livestock. Then we said, let us get food for livestock. We bought hay, and we subsidized, and we took to the farmers for us to save the crop. And at some stage, we are doing what we call off-take. You buy from the farmer, you feed it, you sell it, even at a throwaway price. What Red Cross has been doing in Kenya.
Sure. Do you think that could have happened in this period right here that we're talking about? Just the last hour, we heard some astronomical figures of livestock that have been, those that have been stolen. But then during the drought period, in the hour before that, what are we looking at? What was it, CT?
2.5 million.
2.5 million.
Yeah,
2.6 million head of cattle that have died, not the ones that have been stolen, died.
In 3 months.
In 3 months.
In 3 months.
Do you think that this mitigation that you're talking about could have happened and happened successfully with things the way they currently are today?
That should have happened. That's why I'm talking about the reality and the situation that it is. The real situation should have been, not the real situation, the ideal situation should have been 1, 2, 3. But the reality is that it's not happening. You see a lot of hay all over this country, even some from Uganda and even some from Tanzania. Why didn't we do that in good time to save livestock? There's a young man in Kajiado. I passed and I was told, this young man had 150 head of cattle. I counted whatever is left in his boma, there are 12. So in terms of the economy of the people, that is a huge part of our GDP. That's why our GDP growth at the end of this season, unless you infuse it from other considerations, we have lost from the agriculture sector.
Drought has always been a factor that this country has grappled with. We argue that this particular season of drought is the worst we've had in about over 40 years.
Yeah.
Now, in the time when you were Minister for Agriculture, what are some of the gains that the ministry put in place? One, to secure our pastoral communities against drought, that's number one. Two, in terms of simply having the forethought and planning to ensure that in the seasons of plenty, we have a buffer for that very day when we don't have that. What systems did you put in place? And of those systems, how many of them are still operational? And what else could have been done to ensure that the drought that we have now, even if it existed, would not have had the terrible negative impact that it currently has?
What we did, we turned what they call strategic grain reserve into what we call strategic food reserve. Why were we calling it that way? So that the animal products are also kept in a way that we are able to cushion the consumer and the farmer. Because what happens at times is when you produce a lot of milk, the prices plummet. And that gives you a loss that you may not be able to recover and take care of your stock when there is need for money to be infused or to be injected into livestock production. So what we did was buy more from the farmer, store it in certain conditions, including powdered milk and so forth. Ensure that the farmer is encouraged to do what we call offtake. Because you see, farming for some communities like livestock farming is more cultural than economic. So the more livestock I have, the more prestigious I'm likely to be considered in society. But we were trying to encourage them that sell it to us before the drought comes. Because there is a system done by IGAD, which is called early warning system, that warns you that at this particular time, there will be a drought. And this drought, this is the magnitude of the drought. And if you realize the farmers are going to be vulnerable, you make sure that you offtake from them. The second issue is what I've just mentioned a few minutes ago, that you provide hay to the farmers so that they are able to feed their livestock. The hay can be bought by the farmers, or when they are in dire conditions, you provide that hay for them. That you will be able to salvage the livestock and cross over from a period of drought to a period of plenty or a period of rain. The third issue that we instituted was to improve the stock. And at that time, we were keeping 8 million bags of maize so that we create this buffer that is required, because there is no time that you will have enough maize throughout the season. So what you do, you stock it, about 8 million, because Kenyans consume, each one of us on average, there are people who eat more. We consume 100 kilos of maize per year. And therefore, if you have 50 million Kenyans, you need 50 million bags of maize on average. And therefore, if you harvest 40 million like what we harvested last year, you need about 10 million bags to cushion. But if you have 8 million stored in under National Cereals and Produce Board, you release to the market instead of importing. Then you encourage what we call cross-border business. And from Tanzania and from Uganda. Uganda usually does it earlier than Tanzania. Then the third issue is that to improve the conditions for farmers maize stored. We did what we were calling warehouse receipting. That you bring your maize, we store it for you. The time you want it, we release it. Just the way you take your money to the bank, the day you want the money, you go and you declare.
How successful was this?
It worked for the period I was there. But when I left, I don't know what happened. And it's no longer there. National Cereals and Produce Board, I don't know how many bags of maize, perhaps 100,000 on their side.
But when you talk about, I'm thinking of the pastoral communities, the areas in which they live and who are the hardest hit by this drought.
Yeah.
Apart from simply buying their livestock,
Yes.
what about the value addition? I mean, the previous government talked about value addition, building abattoirs, which we were told were built but don't really function. I mean, we had Kenya meat.
Yeah.
What sense did it make for livestock to travel all the way from wherever they come from to a place when a similar facility could actually have been established in the very place?
Yeah.
Okay. If you talk about tea, where tea is grown, tea is processed in the areas it is grown.
That's it.
Yeah, you don't transport the tea to some far-flung area for it to be processed. Now, the same with cattle. I mean, Why was this logic not used? Because I believe if the value addition had been offered or presented to these communities, they would have been better off.
You know, that actually, I don't know what happened to abattoirs. We started, the former Minister Munyao started that, and I think the Uhuru regime also did part of it. But I don't know why they are not operating. But you see, Muga, the main problem with Kenya is lack of effective governance.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
We are corrupt. We are simply corrupt.
So we build an abattoir and then we don't operationalize it.
Yes, just like many hospitals that we have. There are no drugs. There are many hospitals all over. In fact, it is faith-based hospitals that cushion the people.
Public health system.
Yeah, our public health system. Because it's corruption.
Just like private schools cushion the education system.
And in Rwanda, it's the other way around. Nobody goes to private schools. Private schools are crying for children. But here, private schools are more popular, especially at the primary level. You see, even it's going to be private universities are better than public universities because 6 billion debt in our universities is making universities almost die. And yet, you have almost out of 38 public universities, you have 12 of them with acting vice chancellors. That's why they were advertising the other day, and deputy vice chancellors. Why are we saying the private universities are doing better? It's because of just management. You don't need to have a professor of medicine running University of Nairobi. You need somebody who has some basic management. He can be a professor, but he must have basic management. Running a university is not like operating in a theater. It is different. Unless we infuse the best brains to run our universities, we are going to be doing whatever providing whatever capitation. Why aren't we making these universities do research? And we encourage them, the research they do is paid for by institutions within even the country. Many universities abroad, that is how, I've never gone to any university abroad. I've just done my degrees here in these local universities. But the knowledge I have is when you go to University of Minnesota, professors are retained on the basis of the research funding they attract. If you are a good professor and you are attracting research funding, you are retained by the university. That's the basis of you being useful to the university. Why are we pretending? And these guys, many of these people, they went to universities abroad. And they know this to be the truth. I know a president, anyway, did not go to any university abroad, just like me. But he's got this knowledge. But are we killing these universities so that we buy land? Like Egerton University, with more than 3,000 acres of land, worth about 20 billion. We're almost killing it. Is it because we want to buy the land? This is a problem that it is corruption.
This seems to be the song that has been sung for the longest time.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that we keep asking the question about. That is there a desire to get rid of it? Is there a desire to do the right thing? Is there a desire to get rid of the cancer that continues to bring about the wrong thing? And if that is not the case, then would you say that the wrong people are sitting in and have been sitting in positions of leadership?
The problem that I see in our country and in the rest of Africa is that tribalism is still a factor of politics. And today, if I come from community A and I steal, nobody from that community will frown upon me, because we've not been able to internalize the fact that the government is an animal in our midst, that we need to nurture it and make it work for us. The government is still an alien body, and anybody stealing from government is appropriating resources to be owned by one of us. The way we used to raid communities as Kalenjins to get livestock into our midst, you became a hero. The way Sir Charles Drake, who was a pirate, was knighted by the king, is the way we were knighting our leaders. We are still knighting them. That any thief
If you go out there and
Yes,
you
and
raid
you
and
come with something.
bring the spoils home.
Yes,
You'll
you are
be
doing
all
well.
in.
That's why there are some governors who have said, bring us our thief. And they went ahead to elect the person. So at times, if we are to use the issue of corruption against this regime, where the two top leaders come from, they will not see it as a problem. They are appropriating resources to one of them, and therefore the community will be safer if one of us has some lagis that he can dispense with whenever we run short of resources. That is the truth. Number two, even Raia themselves, they are corrupt. You cannot go for an election, Eric, if you want to be a governor of the region where you come from, if you don't have 50 million or more. You'll be stoned, you'll be heckled.
Billion.
You need 50 million on the lower side. 50 million on the lower side. Those early days, even with 1 million, you could win an election. Today, if you want to be an MP, if I want to be an MP in Cherangani, I need no less than 20 million shillings. So you have the choice, either to invest the 20 million or you go and burn it and you may not win.
And you're saying the voter is to blame because the voter is the one who demands this 20 million.
They demand and they don't care where you've gotten. Even as retired as I am, with my little pension from Parliament, when I go home, they expect me to provide some resources. At times I ask them, where do you expect? They say, no, you have so many friends. So I don't know whether Munga will give me resources to take home.
You didn't see that coming, City.
No, I didn't. That caught me off guard completely. But Mheshimiwa, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
It's a personal question.
Yeah.
You were vice chairman of UDA.
Deputy chair.
Sorry.
Yeah,
you were deputy chair
Yeah.
of UDA.
Yes.
And you left
Yes.
and went to Azimio.
Yes.
Why?
Well, it's a good question. I will answer you because I've answered in other studios. I will answer you. I joined UDA believing that I have not been with William for 20 years. You remember we parted ways in 2002. I moved from Kanu to NAC. And he remained in Kanu. They went ahead, they lost the 2002 elections. In 2007, I was still in PNU, he was in ODM. You know what happened. 2013, when I came back from Addis Ababa, I joined Musalia Mudavadi, ANC, and I went ahead to lose the election for Senate Trans Nzoia. And 2017, I ran again on another ticket. And by then, William Ruto was a sitting deputy president. So in between, I was doing a bit of soul searching. And I was saying, okay, this young man, because he's a young man compared to me, I'm not demeaning him. He's 10 years younger than me. So I was saying, this young man has tried. He was smarter than me. Because he was smarter, he decided to join ODM when he knew ODM was the wave with our community. I stuck with Kibaki. That's how I lost my seat. I said, let me join him.
So you're saying the president joined ODM because he understood that it was the wave that the community he comes from supported.
Yeah. Actually, the people told him, we have already moved. I don't know, they talked of a place in Nandi towards Kisumu. So he was told, we are just approaching Kisumu town. You know that place near Riyadh?
Yes.
Yeah, we are approaching Kisumu. So he followed them. You remember there was a bit of funny stories in the run-up to 2013. Him meeting Kalonzo, meeting Musalia, and it became headline stories. If you just jog your mind, you'll remember that. But it was a strategic thing because he was not keen to join Raila at that time. But he realized through other people, Henry Koskei, the late Mr. Jackson Kibor, the community, the late Kipkalia Kones, the community had already moved. So he quickly followed them, he overtook them, and he became part of the Pentagon. So he was smarter than me. I stuck with PNU, being loyal to Kibaki. So I lost an opportunity to be part of the leadership of my community. He was ahead of me. 2013, they were able to galvanize the forces against the Hague So he created a monster in The Hague, and that is the monster that allowed them and Uhuru to win the presidency. So I said, okay, this guy has beaten me more than 3 times. Why don't I join him? I joined him and we worked for 2 years very well. I cannot blame it on him. We worked very well because I was the deputy chair and I was telling him, I believe in strong political parties, which I strongly still believe in strong political parties. But the parties must be organic. We fast forward, we are juggling with the issue of the deputy president.
The running mate.
The running mate. And before the running mate, I go to him. I remember we were in Western from 10 o'clock up to midnight, telling him, if Musalia and Wetangula are not with you, the optics are not right. We were 5 of us. I don't know, William was there, and there were 3 other people, and I. By midnight, he said, yes, I take your story. That was in November 2021. November 2021. Fast forward, you know what happened, the tsunami and all that. So I was instrumental in doing that because I believed the only way you must create the right optics. I told him without Western, you look like a lone ranger. Central Kenya is okay with you, but without Western, the optics are not right. That happened, and that was the beginning of my problems. I did not realize I was not part of the system. I was fought so bitterly by my own people, most of them Kalenjins. Then the issue of running mate came. I was for Kindiki myself. Other people were for Alice Wahome. Others were for Muturi, JB Muturi. Others were for even Ndindi Nyoro. Now that Sunday, when he picked Rigathi, I did not realize that I had not stood. Everybody stood and clapped. Because of my age, my weight, and poor eyesight, I was not able to stand in good time. I was devastated. Then the following morning, Mother Kirwa was picked by Raila Odinga. I realized I don't belong to the team that I was with yesterday. I belong to this team. And when I did a lot of scanning, I realized out of all Kibaki ministers, Kibaki won. I was the only one.
Who was on the other side.
And I don't regret. I'm still happy that, yes, I'm in the opposition. And really, possibly I would not have offered anything to him. He has the best professionals, better than me, in terms of academic excellence. And possibly I would have been the wrong person in the herd.
You think you'd have been the wrong voice?
Well, I think I would have been a square peg
in a round
hole. So I don't regret. I'm happy.
Kipruto Arab Kirwa, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our time is short. So you're on the other side now again. William Ruto has beaten you for the 7th time?
Yeah, I lost the count.
Thank you for joining us.